5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Coming to you live. Has it been live? Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Welcome to our brilliant and savvy audience who doesn't want just the usual conventional wisdom. You know, when Sam and I first thought about doing this broadcast, we were really worried. You know, twice a week, is there going to be enough material to sustain a show twice a week? Well, what's happened, Sam?
There's been too much material. We can't even cover it all.
We are overwhelmed. You know, in the age of Trump, there is so much critically important material that goes to the future of our politics and our society. As Sam points out, we are overwhelmed. We can't cover everything as much as we would want to. And that's just something no one could have anticipated. That's just an extraordinary expression of what's going on in this country. And of course, there is a war raging, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a brand new shocking poll in the state of Texas. We're going to talk about a tragic accident that occurred in the war zone, actually over Iraq, but having to do with the war in Iran and whatever else Sam, you know, has ready to toss out at me.
Yeah. Let's start with our first topic of the evening. The war in Iran continues. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has threatened to set the region's oil and gas infrastructure, quote, on fire if Iranian energy sites are attacked. Khomeini's purported statement called for the vital Strait of Hormuz to remain closed as a, quote, tool of pressure as the global oil markets face historic levels of disruption. International benchmark Brent crude is trading over $100 per barrel, and the average U.S. gas price is at $3.60 per gallon, up from $2.94 a month prior. Dad, is the war leading the world toward economic collapse or an economic nightmare?
So far, that does seem to be the case. Obviously, we don't know what the denouement of this war is going to be, because Trump could not be more contradictory, more muddy, more unclear about just why he started this war, what he hopes to get out of it, and what the end point is going to be. We've heard him say, oh, you know, we've won, it's about over. Oh, no, it's going to go on indefinitely. No, we're not going to have boots on the ground. Well, maybe we'll have boots on the ground. We're not going to rule that out. And then we have the execrable Pete Hegseth, who just seems to revel in death and destruction. He seems to, you know, his favorite word is lethality. You know, he revels in blowing up these boats and killing people on the high seas with no due process. And he seems to revel in the death and destruction that's killed, you know, I don't know how many, but certainly at least thousands of people in the Middle East. That seems to be something he finds almost joyous. It's just hideous that we have someone who seems to so much enjoy the very act of war as opposed to what the objectives of the war are actually supposed to be. You know, I've said this before, there's a famous Jewish proverb: man plans, God laughs. Or as Mike Tyson put it, you got a great plan till someone punches you in the mouth. Well, it's even worse here. We didn't even have a plan to start with for God to laugh at us. We didn't even have a plan to start with to have it somehow disrupted by a punch in the mouth. Unlike any other war that I can recall or that I've studied, you know, we have no coherent rationale for this war. No attempt to explain to the American people just what this is all about. What do we get? A rant at, you know, what was it, Sam? 1:30 or 2:30 in the morning, you know, a time when no one is listening, that made no coherent case for the war. We've had, you know, a myriad of conflicting, contradictory explanations since then. So it's not just that we had a plan go awry. It's we had no plan to start with, and we had no public support to start with. Even the Vietnam War, even the war in Iraq, even the war in Afghanistan, all wars that went sour over time, early on had the rally behind the flag effect, had support from the American people. Now we're starting with a war that at the very beginning, in an unprecedented way, is opposed by a substantial majority of the American people. And even a larger majority, well over 60%, believes that the president has not adequately explained the rationale for this war or what the ultimate objective is going to be. I just saw Congressman Jordan, right? I think he's the head of the Judiciary Committee, right?
Yeah.
The Republican. He was being interviewed by Casey Hunt on, I think it was on CNN, and he kept saying, oh, the rationale for the war is to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. Of course, Trump has given us some very different rationales. We want to overturn the repressive Islamic dictatorship, and I want to choose who the next leader is. That's not the same, is it, Sam, as stopping them from getting a nuclear weapon, isn't it?
No, sir.
Couldn't be more different. And we've heard a whole host of other rationales as well to stop them from supporting proxies, to stop them from developing missiles, you name it. I can remember all of the conflicting rationales. Well, here's the problem with stopping them from getting a nuclear weapon, presuming that's the rationale. We actually had a treaty in place to stop them from getting nuclear weapons way back more than a decade ago under Barack Obama. No, the treaty did not stop them from sponsoring proxies or wars on terror, but that wasn't its objective. It had a singular, critical objective, way more important than anything else, right, Sam?
And stay tuned because I have to fix the audio really quickly. Hold that thought.
I'm holding it.
And try again.
All right. So it had one objective, but critical one that they're touting now, a decade later or more, to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. It wasn't designed to turn them into a pro-Western democracy. It had one critical objective. And guess what? It was working. Trump's own administration certified that the deal was working. But what did Trump do? He blew it up, so to speak. Got us out of the deal simply because it had Obama's name on it, not because he had any rationale for explaining why the deal wasn't working. I just heard Jim Jordan, in responding to the deal, never said it wasn't working to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. He said, oh, but we'll be giving them all this cash. Well, you got to give them something. You're not going to get them to stop their nuclear ambitions unless you reach some kind of compromise. But it wasn't that we just gave them a barrel of cash. This was their funds that was unfrozen as part of the deal to alleviate the sanctions on Iran. Well worth it to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon, which, by the way, may well have stopped this horrible, destructive war, the worst way to try to get them to not get a nuclear weapon. And, of course, Trump promised, oh, I'll get you a much better deal. I'm the great negotiator. Well, more than a decade later, did Trump get us a deal, Sam? Did Trump get us a deal?
No, sir.
Not at all. And this is after blasting Obama. Oh, he's such a terrible negotiator. He couldn't get a new deal. Biden, couldn't get a deal. Then I heard Jim Jordan say, well, the reason we had to go was that the negotiations weren't working. Well, why not if Trump is the great deal maker? Plus, there was no rush to end the negotiations. It's not like they were in danger of developing a nuclear weapon tomorrow. Even the Trump's own intelligence community said, under the best of circumstances, they are years away from developing a nuclear weapon, if ever. So why was there a great urgency right now in breaking off the talks and launching this war, which we'll talk about in a moment in much greater depth? Plus, even if we keep up the bombing for a more extended period of time, there's no guarantee that you're going to bomb them into not developing a nuclear weapon. There are two critical things to consider here. Number one, presuming the dictatorship survives, and right now it looks like it's going to survive unless we occupy the country. And, who knows what Trump might do, but that would be even a bigger disaster than what's going on right now and is overwhelmingly opposed by the American people. That's point one. Point two is they have about 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium. Unless we somehow destroy it or remove it during the war, they'll be right in a position to start up again, assuming they have their nuclear ambitions. And you know what? They will be much more motivated to develop a nuclear weapon as a result of Trump's war than before, because they know, they certainly know now, the only way you can protect your country from an American intervention is if you have a nuclear deterrent. Note, America has never intervened, never attacked a country with a nuclear weapons capacity. North Korea, you've heard me say this, posed a far more direct threat to the United States than Iran ever did. And yet, of course, we're not going to attack North Korea because we know they have missiles and nuclear weapons. By the way, here's the other thing. The other claim was, there are so many I can't keep up with them, but one claim I haven't mentioned. Oh, they were about to attack us, right? So we had to attack them first. Well, if they were about to attack us, how come on day one, when we launched the bombing attack, they didn't attack us in counter? If they were ready and poised to attack us. And of course, I think rationale 110 was the one Marco Rubio so quickly walked back, and that was, we had to attack them because Israel was going to attack Iran, and in return to retaliate for Israel attacking Iran, they were going to attack us. Of course, they never did. And of course, he quickly walked that back because it looked like Donald Trump once again was being played as a sucker by Netanyahu. Netanyahu may benefit from this war. The United States certainly and hardly does not benefit. And we'll talk a little bit more about the economic consequences and the latest disaster for the United States in the war zone around Iran. But, we have to end the war. And presuming this government is still in place, they are going to be super motivated to develop a nuclear weapon to keep this disaster from happening again. So even if that was the objective you want to pluck out of, who knows how many contradictory, conflicting, nonsensical explanations, it makes absolutely no sense.
Wow, that was a good one, Dad.
Thanks.
There's actually breaking news tonight from the war. But before we get to that, I do want to pose the question. Do you think that the gas will actually get to $5 a gallon on average? Like we said earlier, it's $2.60 right now.
All right, let me talk a little about that then, the economic repercussions, which we have, we use the gas price just as kind of a placeholder for lots of economic repercussions. I think it is, who knows? I mean, Trump could stop the war tomorrow, right? Or he could go on for a year. It's so hard to predict what's going to happen because Trump is so hard to predict. Decisions and revisions that a minute will reverse, in the words of the great poet T.S. Eliot, who also said, I grow old, I shall wear my trousers rolled. Another line very applicable to what's happening with our president. Now, can gas go to $5? Absolutely. It's already gone up something like more than 50 cents in a little over a week. And if this war drags on for weeks and weeks, absolutely it can go to $5 or maybe more. There's no particular limit as to where gas can go. But as I said, we put that in as a placeholder, as a symbol of the disastrous effects of this war on the overall economy. We've already seen, at least in the near term, a collapse of the stock market. What was it down today, Sam? 670 or something?
The S&P was down 1.5%. The Nasdaq was down 1.7%.
Wow.
And
the Dow?
The Dow is down 1.5%.
Can you give me a number on the Dow? Was it like close to 700?
Uh,
I think that's, a little clearer for people than the percentages.
Give me a second.
All right. But my point is, it reverberates through the entire economy, and the stock market is a harbinger. So, if gas prices and petroleum prices...
I got it. Yeah. The Dow is down 739 points. S&P is down 103 points. Wow. And Nasdaq is down 104 points.
Wow. They're not records, but they're not way off.
Everybody's saying, where I live, gas is already $5 a gallon. We're talking about the average.
I think it's like 360.
Yeah. It's 360, yeah.
Yeah, I saw down on our street here, we have very expensive gas here in Bethesda. It was the premium that was $5.19. But we're talking about an average for regular gas going up another $1.50, and I think it could go well higher than that. So what happens when gas prices go up? How are vegetables, fruits, meat, products, how are they transported in the United States, Sam?
Trucking.
And how do trucks run?
On gas.
On diesel fuel, right? And diesel fuel has gone up almost a quarter, much faster than regular gas. That reverberates through the entire economy. Everything that you buy is going to be impacted. Plus, is petroleum only used for fuel? No, it's used for a host of other things, plastics, and critically, fertilizer. A lot of the fertilizer passes through the Gulf of Hormuz, which now is
the Strait of
Hormuz, which is pretty much closed. And the farmers are screaming. They've already suffered great pain through Trump's tariffs, which have raised the price of the goods they need to run their farms. Now they're hit with another shocking price increase.
I know this is like, screaming into the wind at this point, especially during the Trump administration. But don't you think we could maybe avoid these conflicts, these wars, this economic pain, if at least some of it, if we just got off of fossil fuels? Again, I know the Trump administration, that's just not going to happen. But think about if we could get off fossil fuels, we could have avoided this conflict, the economic nightmare it brings. Am I wrong or am I right?
100% right. One of the most foolish things I ever did was run for office way back in 2005, 2006, so 20 years ago. And one of my big themes was, because that was when the Iraq War was going on and was turning sour, one of my big themes was, if we just took a fraction of the amount of money we wasted in the Iraq War, we could have made the conversion from fossil fuels, this is 20 years ago, to clean, renewable sources of energy and avoided these feckless forever wars in the Middle East. So you think you're shouting in the wind now. I was shouting in the wind 20 years ago.
Oh, yikes.
And talk about, wasted money. We're spending, I think, already, and this is Trump figures, so take them with a huge grain of salt, already about $12 billion on the war. And I'm sure the indirect costs are way higher than that.
Didn't Trump say today that high gas prices means that we'll all get rich or something like that.
I did not hear
Yeah,
that.
I think he said that.
I guess the oil companies will get rich, yeah. And you know who's going to get rich?
Rich people?
No. Who's going to get rich abroad? The last person we want to see get rich.
The left.
Vladimir
Yeah.
Putin and Russia. You know why?
Because now they're going to step up and provide the world with oil.
Right. And every time the price of oil goes up, Russia benefits because their primary product is oil and their primary source of revenue is the export of oil. So the pricier the oil, the better off is Putin and the Russians, which means they are better able to prosecute the war in Ukraine, which really does fundamentally impact America's national security. Because we know if Ukraine goes under, Putin is not stopping there. He's going broadly after our crucial NATO allies in Europe. Another complete misalignment of priorities. So this reverberates across the American economy in every aspect. It reverberates across the world.
People are saying it also affect fertilizer prices.
I went through the whole fertilizer.
You did go through fertilizer.
Yes.
Okay.
I did talk about the fertilizer and how already the farmers have been hit badly by Trump's tariffs and now are getting hit by rising prices of fertilizer because that's also critical to the Strait of Hormuz.
There is also breaking news tonight in the war with Iran. A U.S. KC-135 Stratotanker, a refueling aircraft, went down in western Iraq, the U.S. military said, though the incident was, quote, not due to hostile fire or friendly fire. The statement did not specify whether any U.S. service members were hurt or killed, but I heard there were 6 service members on board, so that's not looking good.
It's not looking good, and before I say anything, my heart goes out to those brave men and women aboard. I hope they'll be okay. You know, we have no way of knowing at this point, and, you know, my heart goes out to their families. I wish this will come out for all the best. But I'll tell you what this reminds me of, Sam.
What?
You were way too young. The Jimmy Carter attempt to rescue, it's back to Iran, the Iranian hostages. It was a huge disaster. American aircraft collided with one another, with American deaths. They never got off the rendezvous point to even attempt the rescue. This looks like, again, 2 American planes, 2 refueling planes collided with one another. And we hope it won't mirror the tragedy during the Carter administration. I hope and pray that it will not. But the Carter administration was blasted unmercifully for its incompetence in having this abortive rescue and having planes crash. You know, again, I don't know what happened, but we've seen a lot of incompetence in the prosecution of this war. We saw, this is the 4th American plane to go down, Sam.
Is it?
Yes, 3 American planes were down by friendly fire already. Now this plane is down apparently by a friendly crash. That's 4 planes already downed in this war. We're talking about people, American citizens in the Middle East, not being warned in advance, right?
Right.
Not having an opportunity to get out of there in an opportune time. We're talking about our allies in the Gulf states not being warned in time to make real preparations.
That's not
and
good.
most horrifically,
Yeah.
this is not the only tragic accident. What is the most, it's not an accident, well, what is the most tragic event of this war so far?
The girls' school.
The girls' school. It has now been confirmed by multiple independent sources that, yes, an American missile struck either at or near the girls' school, killing more than 150 persons, most of them young girls. And of course, the Trump administration man up and, admit that, they were responsible and take accountability for it.
No, of course not.
Just the opposite. Again, I'm not saying, obviously, they deliberately targeted a girls' school, but another example of incompetence. And when you're in a war, incompetence can hurt people and hurt them a whole lot. And apparently, they were so incompetent that, according to, again, independent investigations, since we got, I don't think yet, a real investigation from the U.S., they were using outmoded, old attack plans for that base. I think it was in southern Iran, and that apparently accounted for the error in striking near the girls' school.
We put up a poll today on your YouTube posts channel. We asked people if they approve or disapprove of the war. Some people laughed at it, but maybe because 86% said they strongly oppose, 6% said they somewhat oppose, 3% said they somewhat approve, and only 4% said they strongly approve.
What percent said they strongly approve?
4. So, at least from our channel, the sentiment is very clear.
Yeah, well, the public polling is obviously not that extreme.
Right.
But it still indicates clear majority opposition to the war, but even much higher opposition, or at least, higher result that over 60% of the American people do not believe Trump has given us a rationale for this war. Only something in the 20% to 30% range believes that Trump has given us an adequate explanation of this war. And it hasn't gotten any better since that, wee hours of the morning rant prior to the strike. There has been nothing coherent coming out of this administration except a spate of implausible, conflicting, contradictory explanations that truly insult the intelligence of the American people, I have to say.
You have to say?
I have to say, insult the intelligence of the American people.
Yeah, I get that. All right, our next topic of the evening. 2 major acts of violence here in the U.S. today. 1. A man previously convicted of providing ISIL material support and recently released from prison has been identified by the FBI as the shooter who killed 1 person and injured 2 at Old Dominion University in Virginia. 2. A gunman rammed his truck into a West Bloomfield Township, Michigan synagogue Thursday afternoon and then opened fire on the temple, exchanging gunfire with security guards before he was killed. Luckily, nobody was killed at that incident.
Yeah. Another school shooting. They have become as commonplace as rain in the spring. Generally, looking at all mass shootings like this one, one a day in the United States. We have more mass shootings than all of our allied nations combined. And what have policymakers done about this, Sam?
Nothing.
Nothing. Going all the way back to Columbine, more than 25 years ago, thoughts and prayers, as if thoughts and prayers are going to sell lives. And, Republicans save lives. And, the Republicans have blocked what we need to be doing, which is real gun control like our allied nations have done. To listen to the NRA and the gun lobby, you think with our loose gun laws, basically non-existent at the national level, we should be the safest by far of our peer nations. And of course, the opposite is true. If you look at our closest peer nations, the G7 group of nations, which is nations like Britain and France and Germany and Australia add in, an American per capita is 20 times more likely to be murdered by a gun than residents of our peer nations. Not 20%, 20 times more likely to be murdered by a gun. These are preventable tragedies. And you said this is someone who should never have had a gun, right? Because we supposedly should have red flag laws that keep people like this gunman from having a gun. On the other incident, I don't know a whole lot about it, except I know, you know what? It's always the Jews. We've talked about this before. For thousands of years, Jews have been the scapegoats. You know, wells are poisoned, children disappear. You blame the Jews. There's an outbreak of the plague. You blame the Jews. And we're seeing Jews being blamed now. And unfortunately, and this just pains me to no end, you know, we have a Jewish state. I've been a staunchest supporter of the Jewish state you can imagine. But we have a horrific, awful leader of the Jewish state right now in Benjamin Netanyahu, kind of a mirror of Donald Trump, who really is turning Israel into an international pariah nation, and I cry over that.
Do you think that Israel's actions over the last, I don't know, however long you want to count, especially recently with the war in Gaza, now the war in Iran, do you think Netanyahu and the Israelis are actually putting Jews around the world at risk through their heinous actions?
I can't prove that, but that's certainly a very plausible explanation for what's going on. Plus, Donald Trump's, you know, cozying up to some of the worst, most virulent anti-Semites in this country, including having, you know, a lavish public Mar-a-Lago dinner with two of the worst ones.
Our final topic before we head to, oh no, we want to talk about the Texas poll.
Yeah, this just came in.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked a lot about Texas, telling you how for 20 years I've been hearing Democrats are going to become competitive in Texas, and it just hasn't happened. They haven't won any statewide election for anything. Governor, Senate, Court of Appeal, Criminal Appeal, Supreme Court, nothing. But it looks like maybe, and this may be another illusion, that because of the tremendous backlash against the Trump administration, including among the critical Hispanic vote in Texas, that there is maybe a realistic opportunity that Tallarico, who just emerged pretty handily as the Democratic candidate, has a chance against either of the two Republicans, incumbent Senator Cornyn or Attorney General Paxton. A poll just came out. It's not the greatest poll, but you know, you don't get that many Senate polls. 576 Texas registered voters, public policy polling, legitimate polling outfit, recent, March 4th and 5th, and Tallarico, amazingly, you don't see this in Texas, is ahead by an eyelash, well within the margin of error, but ahead, and ahead of both of them, 44-43 to Cornyn and 47-45 to Paxton. The lead over Paxton may not be such a shocker, but the conventional wisdom has been, oh, if Cornyn gets the nomination and emerges from this bare-knuckle runoff fight, he'll easily defeat Tallarico. Well, if this poll is any indication, that's not the case. I still do think Tallarico has a better chance against Paxton. But either of these candidates is going to come out badly bruised out of that very tough runoff. So, while, you know, 20 years of experience argues against this, there is some glimmer of an opportunity for Democrats to pick up that Senate seat, which could be pivotal in winning back the Senate overall.
All right, with that, we will move on to our question portion of the show. He needs his soda. We're back, sorry.
Okay.
Hit the wrong button.
I got it.
Before we move on, we have over 1,200 people watching.
Nice.
But only 400 likes. Make sure you like the stream. It helps us a lot. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Turn on the notification bell so you know we're live. Donations and questions. Get in line to get their questions answered from this guy. Alan Lichtman, Distinguished Professor of History at American University.
That's me.
How does it feel to have that title?
What's that?
How does it feel to have that title?
It feels pretty good. I've had it for 15 years.
Wow.
I think, I'm not positive, but I think I'm the longest tenured distinguished professor at the university. It's a real title. Not something I made up.
Oh, okay.
It's the highest rank above that of full professor, and it means you have to have made major contributions to uh, as a public intellectual and as a professor and academic across the world.
All right. Our first question is a $20 donation, Australian dollars, from Harry Chittenden. They say, there was a Reddit discussion earlier this week suggesting that there will be at least 6 false keys by 28. Midterms, incumbency, charisma, military failure, economy times 2. Thoughts?
As you know, I don't like to speculate, and I don't like to prematurely call the keys. I'm a little bit burned from finally having been wrong after 45 years and taking tremendous flack and tremendous heat, but that comes with it. I can deal with it. That is not implausible at all, but there's a long way to go before 2028.
Right. This is a $5 donation from Gish Gallop is a real word. If you are not a long-time listener, I used to claim that Gish Gallop was not a real word, but that was all just a joke, really.
Yeah, and Gish Gallop means you come out with so many lies. I don't even like to call them lies because lies means you have a concept of truth, which Trump doesn't have. Come up with so many falsehoods so rapidly that you can't keep up.
Right. Their question. Trump hasn't been proven an Epstein co-conspirator, but what about obstruction itself, especially Zorro Ranch? Is this still not scandal key turning?
Not yet. I don't think there's been enough. There's a lot of smoke on this and a lot of fire, and I firmly believe 99%, you can take it to the bank, that Trump knew all about what Epstein was doing. It's just so remarkable. You have all these people who appear like, well, Trump, God knows, maybe 10,000, tens of thousands of times. Others have appeared hundreds and thousands of times. And what did none of them know, Sam?
Anything.
One of the biggest sex trafficking rings ever, conducted fairly publicly there in Florida. And nobody, his closest friend, Donald Trump, his accountant, his donor, buddies who are constantly in contact with him. None of them knew anything. All of them had the Sergeant Schultz defense. I know nothing. I see nothing. It staggers the imagination. Do you believe any of that, Sam?
No, of course not.
No, not one bit of it.
No.
Again, they're just insulting the intelligence of the American people.
We have 1,300 people watching. Don't forget to like the stream if you're tuned in. This is from our good friend George Politis. Professor, do you think Trump can easily be played because he's too immature, arrogant, and he thinks he's so powerful?
Yes. And yes.
Yes. Okay.
And he has been played. He's been played constantly by Vladimir Putin. And played again. Apparently he's even, while Putin is greatly benefiting from his war in Iran, I think he's even eased some of the sanctions on Russia. There's nothing that he's done that has really challenged Putin. And there are so many things that he's done that have aided and abetted what Putin is all about. He was played by Kim Jong-un. Oh, we love one another. I'm going to do something different. We're going to stop the nuclear development and the missile development. Well, how can you love one of the most bloodthirsty dictators in the world who assassinates his political opponents with anti-aircraft guns? Just one of the most horrible people on earth, and you're in love with him? And has Trump done anything to stop the nuclear and missile development in North Korea?
Not recently.
Not ever. It's accelerated.
Right. He did get in a spat with North Korea in his first term.
Right,
but he ended up folding.
Exactly. Taco.
Yeah, true. Taco. And I think he's being played right now by Netanyahu big time in Israel.
Big time. We've talked about that a lot. What's going on is benefiting Netanyahu and hurting us terribly.
We're almost at...
I'm not Pete Hegseth. I don't revel in death. Let's not forget, one of the horrific aspects of war and this war, which you can't overlook, is people are being killed. Apparently, the death toll is now in the thousands, and many of them are innocent civilians who had no role in combat.
Right.
And some of them are Americans. What is the American death toll now? 7, and sadly, it may well go much higher.
This is from our resident New York Giant fan, James LaGruta.
Is it a Giants question?
It's not the football season.
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
It's not a Giants question.
All right.
But he does often ask Giant questions. They say, people easily forget that Iran had a democratically elected leader who wanted to nationalize the oil. Then the U.S. and Britain staged a coup that would haunt us years later until this very day.
Couldn't agree with you more. That was the Mossad government back in the early 1950s during the Eisenhower administration, and that one of the two coups that Eisenhower organized to overturn a duly elected governments, one in Iran and one in Guatemala, and the result was, of course, the dictatorship of the Shah. Yes, he was pro-American, but he was a terrible dictator, and that over time, it took a while, led to the Islamic Revolution and all the problems we see today. And the result in Guatemala is an absolute disaster. A series of authoritarian governments, horrible civil wars, attempted genocide of indigenous peoples. I have said so many times, these interventions in foreign lands designed to create regime change, they don't work. And more often than not, they backfire.
This is from member Here for Today, 42. They say, have you heard that now Iran is apparently threatening to strike the West Coast / California with drones? Do we have any defense against this?
Yeah, I'm not the person to ask about that. I'm not a military authority. I heard Governor Newsom say that's not real. Whether he's right or not, I don't know. It'd be very difficult.
Yeah, how could they attack the West Coast?
I mean, that's about as far from Iran as you can get.
Right, the East Coast is closer.
The East Coast would certainly be closer. So I don't think it's real. You know, it's the fog of war.
This is a $5 donation from Secular Monk. They say, Trump has claimed varying timetables to this war. Israel has claimed no timetable. How much of this conflict is the U.S. helping Israel achieve a goal?
We've discussed that at great length. I do believe that Trump is being played by Israel. Not by Israel. There isn't, you don't get played by Netanyahu, one of the worst actors on the world scene, to engage in a conflict that is terribly detrimental to his own country, but that Netanyahu believes benefits him.
This is from Jim Blowers. Quote, in the 00 decade, the big concern was peak oil, that oil production will decline. That didn't happen because of fracking, but is it happening because of Iran and Trump's attacks?
I don't think it's peak oil, because I don't think it means that the reserves are going to be depleted, but the effect, at least in the near term, and the near term could be years, would be similar to a decline in reserves, which would necessarily bump up prices. Of course, if they had listened to me 20 years ago, Sam, we could have avoided all of this.
Turbid TG1 just said, breaking. Footage reportedly shows an Iranian missile headed towards Turkey's Incirlik air base with reports of sirens sounding in the area.
I think they tried another missile towards Turkey earlier, and the Turkish government claims they shot it down. I mean, who knows?
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
But
I'm not surprised if that's true.
Does history tell us from the Bush admin's failures in the Middle East that America can recover its standing in the world despite the damage it's done to our soft power?
Absolutely. But it's going to be way more difficult after Trump, because Trump has not only obliterated our soft power with his many wars. This is, of course, the most significant, but it's not the only one. But he has obliterated our soft power in many other ways, most notably by dismantling our international aid programs, or at least, substantially dismantling them, not completely, which have saved millions upon millions of lives. And Husam initiated the critical HIV aid program that is credited with saving at least 10 million lives.
W.
George W. Bush. So the damage to our credibility and our soft power is so much worse under Trump than it ever was under Bush, not to mention the way he's undermined our relations with NATO.
I did find some reporting that does say that there may be missiles. Air raid sirens went off at Incirlik Air Base near Adana, Turkey, followed by possible explosions nearby. Incirlik is a major U.S. and NATO base, so any alarms there immediately raise concerns. So
yes, it is a U.S. base.
Guess we'll see what happens there. This is from Black Hero 911. They say, explain a war of attrition versus a war of necessity.
I'm not sure those are polar opposites. A war of attrition means a war that goes on for a very long time, that you are trying to wear down the enemy. Usually you don't go into a war for a war of attrition, because that undermines both sides, obviously. A war of necessity, it's not a technical term, but I would assert it that it is a war needed to deal with a significant, imminent threat to the national security of the United States. Classic example, of course, is World War II, where we didn't go into the war until we were attacked by Japan. A classic opposite is this war of choice in Iran, or the war that Trump blasts so many times, but is pretty much analogous, George W. Bush's war in Iraq.
We're almost at 650 likes.
All right, let's get up to 1,000.
1,000 likes?
Why not?
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
This is
How much time do we have?
We have about 12 minutes remaining.
Oh.
I will be live after this, but I'm not going to be doing a technical post show. I'm just going to be chilling, playing GeoGuessr. So if you want to come to my channel afterwards and chill, you can. Give me a sec. I haven't set up the stream yet, so you got to give me a second to do so. This is from member Costly. Are the U.S. and Israel's actions against Lebanon and Iran creating a dangerous environment for Jewish people around the world? I think I asked you that earlier.
We just talked about that, and I can't prove it, but it's certainly a very plausible causal link.
What is Israel's justification for bombing Lebanon right now?
Because they said Hezbollah fired missiles at them, and they're just retaliating. But of course, the scale of the retaliation is so much greater than the provocation.
Yeah, I've heard that they've already killed hundreds of people in Lebanon.
This was just an excuse, really.
I don't know. Not good.
Netanyahu he's like Hegseth. He does not care about killing people. There's not a shred of empathy present, as far as I can tell, in either person. And I'm not the only one to say this, of course.
Right. A $20 donation from Dcuz. Professor, the Doomsday plane was seen flying over Central California today. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know anything about that. I haven't seen that or heard that.
What is the Doomsday plane?
Not sure what the Doomsday plane is. I'd have to guess, that it's some kind of reconnaissance plane tied into the American defense.
It's a specialized U.S. military aircraft designed as survivable mobile command center for war or national emergencies.
That's what I said.
Maybe that's where people were thinking that Iran was going to bomb California.
Yeah.
But
I assume that it's not unique for it to be flying over Cal. But I don't know. I'm not privy to, the inside information of the military.
You're not?
No.
I thought you were a privy guy. This is from member Brian Sheehan. Switzerland has broken its law of neutrality and has voiced against the Iran war. How significant do you believe this is?
Well, it's not going to have a drop of influence on Trump or Netanyahu, right, Sam?
No.
But it certainly is of great symbolic importance. And it further goes to a point we've made earlier in response to a very good question, and that is the destruction of American credibility and reputation around the world, and the dire need, which may take years, to rebuild America's credibility and soft power. When Switzerland goes against you, you know you're in trouble. And of course, Sam, you have tremendous Swiss ancestry, don't you?
On my mother's side, yes.
Yes.
Not on your side.
Not on my side. I'm not Swiss.
Oh. This is from member Diane Kastner. Honorable hosts, where is our oil? I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that. Do you?
We don't need the oil from the Straits of Hormuz. Apparently, we are the world's greatest producer of oil, but we do import some oil, so it is of some significance to us, but it is much greater significance to Europe and Asia. And as we explained, it's not just, gasoline and heating fuel, it's also all the byproducts that are dependent on what's coming through the Gulf.
So then why are our gas prices rising so quickly if we don't get our oil from them?
I'm not saying we don't get any oil from them. When international prices rise, the price rises everywhere.
Right. Should synagogues in the U.S. stop fundraising and recruiting for the IDF?
I'm not going to tell synagogues what to do. I would not fundraise and recruit for the IDF at this point because of Netanyahu, even though I'm such a strong supporter of Israel. But I'm certainly not going to tell them what to do.
You say that often. You're such a strong supporter of Israel, but in the context of now, it feels like a hard thing to say. I don't feel like I'm a strong supporter of Israel. I mean,
you're misinterpreting me.
Oh, okay.
I'm a strong supporter of the right of Israel to survive.
Okay.
Doesn't mean I support any given government of Israel, and I certainly am a fervent opponent of Netanyahu and his government. I think they're terrible for Israel as well as for the world.
Gotcha. This is from one of our smartest members, Alex Kawa.
Oh, yes.
Although all our members are pretty smart.
They are. We get amazing questions.
They say, my Senator Chris Murphy has said that Dems need to stall Senate business until they can vote again on authorization for the Iran war and to get Rubio and Hegseth to testify before the Senate committees regarding the war. Do you support this?
100%.
100%.
100%. But, unfortunately, is Senator Murphy in the majority?
No.
No. So, they actually can stall Senate business for quite some time. Not that the Senate has any business. The only business is monkey business. Apparently, the only business that they're bringing up the next week is what they call the SAVE Act, and I call it the Scurrilous Act, designed to prevent tens of millions of people from voting to solve a non-existent problem. One of the worst pieces of legislation, really, in the modern history of the country.
This is from member Dirtier Dog. They say, what suggestions would you give to interviewers or politicians who want to counter the Roy Cohn/Trump style of aggression and refusing evidence? How can we encourage citizens to see through these tactics?
Yeah. What you got to do, and what I don't see enough of, although I see it occasionally, is follow-up questions. You never can expect they're going to answer your initial question in a straightforward way. And the most powerful thing, I've been an expert in 110 cases. I've been on the witness stand numerous times. The most powerful thing you can do is bring up contrary evidence. Don't just talk to them. But I saw that today a little bit when Casey Hunt was interviewing Jim Jordan, and he's saying, Donald Trump has done all these wonderful things. He's the only president to do the right thing in Iran. And then she brought up all of these contradictory statements that Donald Trump has made and actually showed the clip. So I think that's probably the most important tactic. And she did it very politely. She wasn't confrontational. She wasn't screaming. And it was very effective because he couldn't respond. He just went back to the same cliched, canned answers.
This is breaking news within the last 20 minutes.
Wow.
Anthony, our mod, just put it in the chat. This is from the New York Times. Trump removes sanctions on Russia to help oil flow amid Iran conflict.
Played.
Wow.
You know, this is one of the worst aspects of what Trump did, and that is played right into the hands of Vladimir Putin. He may be the only leader who stunningly benefits from the Iraq war. Certainly we're not benefiting here. China doesn't benefit because they're dependent on Iraq war. But Russia benefits because they were an exporter. That's how they get their money. And now Trump is facilitating the ability of this horrible dictatorship to thrive and to kill more people in Ukraine. It's virtually a war crime.
Yeah, geez, that's pretty scary. Earlier you mentioned you thought he might be doing it, but I guess this was just confirmed.
This confirms it, yeah.
So there's just, this people are saying that's not breaking news. Well, it's from New York Times 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I said I had heard that earlier.
Right.
But I wasn't absolutely positive, but now we are.
Yeah. This is from our good friend Patrick Murray. Just saw the movie Nuremberg about the trial of Hermann Göring. 10 out of 10 film. What parallels do you see between the Nuremberg trials and the January 6th investigation? It might seem like an extreme comparison, but the psychology is similar, most notably when the Nazis deny/defend the Holocaust and what Republicans' attitudes is towards January 6th.
Yeah, I mean, look, I never, as you know, I don't like to compare things to the Nazis because the Nazi regime was one of the most uniquely horrific regimes in the history of the world. But we are seeing comparisons here in that what the Nuremberg trials did, of Goering and others, was hold those accountable for their deeds, right, Sam?
Mm-hmm.
And what has Trump done with the perpetrators of the January 6th insurrection that injured over 140 police people and resulted in several deaths, at least indirectly? What did he do? Did he hold them accountable?
No.
No, he pardoned them all, including those convicted of violently attacking police officers. So, the lessons of the Nuremberg trials, and again, I'm not drawing an exact parallel, were trashed and smashed by Donald Trump.
Oh, DCAUSE just donated 5 memberships. Appreciate
Nice.
that. This is what I was talking about earlier. Trump touted failing gas prices, but now says, quote, "We make a lot of money as they go up." So he did really say that.
He really
He
said
did
that.
really say that. Yeah.
And who's the we? The already fabulously wealthy owners and holders of stock of fossil fuel companies.
Yeah.
This is like what he said back in his first term when he passed the tax cut. In Mar-a-Lago, when he was surrounded by all his rich friends, "I'm going to make you even richer." I can't believe a president of the United States would say something like what you just quoted, that he is going to make a very few fabulously rich people even richer at the expense of the overwhelming majority of the American people. I thought, but I guess I'm wrong, and I've studied this for 60 years. I thought the President of the United States was supposed to represent the people of the United States, right?
Right.
Not a few wealthy moguls.
Right.
And they call him a populist. He's just the opposite of a populist. We've been bashing that theme on and off on this show.
Hi, Lichtman. You know about ICE is keeping tabs on American citizens.
Yes, I've heard about that. This was one of the biggest scandals of the Bush administration, which administration Trump has disavowed, that they were illicitly surveilling American citizens, the American people broadly, and that seems to be repeated as well. From what I've seen of ICE, they don't care whether you're a citizen or not. They don't care whether you're a legal alien or an undocumented alien. They are going to go after people largely based, as we've seen and has been reported, on racial profiling, on their own time, on their own agenda, and don't care less their impact on American citizens. The two people that they killed them. It was a homicide. In Minneapolis, what was their status, Sam?
Citizen.
Both U.S. citizens. And they didn't seem to care one bit, and they even seemed to revel in it, calling her a bitch after they killed her, after they killed Preddy, saying boo-hoo. The cruelty and the disregard of basic decency and law is stunning. We've never seen anything like this. Is much worse than anything W. Bush did.
All right, our final question of the evening. You might want to not want to answer this because it's about the keys. Professor, could this war turn into a military failure?
Of course it could. If I had to guess, and I'm not turning a key, I'm not doing anything definitive, I'm simply saying if I had to guess, I think it would be more likely a military failure than a success.
Right. All right, with that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live for this evening. If you want to come chill on my channel, I will just be hanging out playing GeoGuessr. We'll put the link to that in the description of this video. Dad, what are your final words to the people?
I'll remind you of what the Civil War General William Tecumseh Sherman said. War is hell. Period. Nothing is worse. Which is why it is so important that you only go to war when you have a good, overwhelming, clear reason for doing so. That's why this war is so horrific and why the loss of so many lives is so wasteful. It's very, very sad.
Yes, it is very sad. All right. I'm going to put my live in the chat. Give me one more second. Give us one more piece of advice, Dad.
Yeah. Stay tuned. We're going to keep you apprised of the war, and as we've done, provide historical perspective and insights you will never get just from the conventional wisdom.
Right. All right. I just put the post show, the link to that in the chat. I will see you all there. Dad, say goodnight to the people.
Good night. We'll see you Tuesday.
Right. Last week I didn't know it was Thursday. Today I do know it's Thursday.
You should. You're young and sharp.
Okay. See ya.
See ya.